Today's show is brought to you by our new presenting sponsor, Hard Rock Bet. Week 8 caps off with the Commanders headed to Arrowhead and taking on the Chiefs. Here's what I did. I like the Chiefs big. Obviously, the Commanders rolling out their backup quarterback. To me, the Chiefs, 11.5 is a lot of points, but I can see the Chiefs winning this game by 20 plus. So I'm taking Kansas City here. I put together a little parlay. Kansas City, minus 11.5. And I'm going to go with Pacheco and Hollywood Brown to score a touchdown. Little parlay action, about 14-1. So building a little parlay with the Chiefs, big, Hollywood Brown, and Pacheco to score. If you want to get really aggressive, maybe a Patrick Mahomes anytime touchdown as well. And that's what I'm doing. So if you haven't tried your first bet on Hard Rock Bet, there's still time for you to get $150 in bonus bets if you win. Just place a $5 bet, and if it hits, you not only get your winnings, but $150 in extra bonus bets. Download the Hard Rock Bet Sportsbook app today and make your first deposit. What is happening, everybody? The Aaron Rodgers revenge game does not gain much revenge as the Green Bay Packers dominate Tomlin, Rodgers, and mainly that defense in the second half. 35-25. Massive win by Green Bay. Jordan Love dominates. And I think we got to start asking questions like, is Pittsburgh even that good? Because if their defense is going to look like it has now the last 2 weeks against Flacco and Jordan Love, they're going nowhere. A lot else happened today. Before I talk any more football, though, make sure you subscribe. Make sure you subscribe. A lot of you guys that watch these videos are not subscribed to the page. We go live after Monday night games, Sunday night games, Thursday night games. Make sure you subscribe. We got content all week long. So subscribe to the page. I appreciate everyone who does. And, leave a comment, leave a like, star. You guys know the drill. Also, everything's on podcast as well. Subscribe to the podcast feed. You'll never miss out on anything. Also today, one of the craziest scores I've ever seen early on in the fourth quarter was the Atlanta Falcons and the Miami Dolphins. You know I got to touch on that. Cam Skattebo. We got a couple teams on quit watch. Pats and the Bills are in a pretty fascinating duel up there in the AFC East. And obviously, it's not stunning because anyone, your boy might have had a little gummy last night and watched that A&M LSU game. That was incredible. SEC games at night, cream of the crop. Best product, best television product. Honestly, I don't even think it's close. Give me the SEC at night. Unless you're Brian Kelly at home playing A&M. And you get curb stomped and it costs you your job. And they're paying him $50+ million to go away. So between James Franklin, Brian Kelly, talking $100 million to not work. Must be nice. So we will dive into some thoughts on Louisiana State University having a job opening, which historically would say is a pretty good one, given that Les Miles, champion. Nick Saban, champion. Ed Ogeron, champion. Brian Kelly, not a champion. But before we dive into some football, I got to tell you about my friends, my partners, the official ticketing app of this podcast, GameTime. Best ticketing app in America. Here's the thing. You guys want to go to one of these games? You want to go to a football game. It does not get any easier to use. You can just search, what game do you want to go to? You want to go to a Rams game. You want to go to a Cowboys game. You want to go to an Eagles game. You type it in. You pick the event you want to go to. You search by the price point. Here's the thing. When you pick your tickets, there's no hidden fees. It tells you with the final price the moment you click on the tickets. You know how many ticketing apps you scroll to, and then all of a sudden you hit it, and then there's an added, whatever, 10, 15, 20%. You're like, what the hell? That actually wasn't the price. It's not the way GameTime rolls. They factor it in. You know the price. Easy to use. Pick any event. Obviously, football, college, or pro. Cannot recommend them enough. So here's the thing. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with your friends at GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use the code JOHN for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code JOHN for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket. Go download the GameTime app today. The Green Bay Packers. That was really impressive. That's the best half of football, and really just, I would say, the best game. I know they started a little sluggish, but they're on the road against the Steelers after they had a mini bye, given they played last Thursday. Like, you're at a disadvantage. That's the best performance they've had, I don't know, in 30, 35, 40 days since the first couple weeks of the season. And it was all about the quarterback and the offense. If Jordan Love is going to play like that, this team can win the AFC. Because the NFC, right? When your offense is that dynamic, we know how good Tucker Kraft is. Romeo Doubs is, I think, excellent. Jacobs is just a war daddy. I go to battle with that guy any day of the week, twice on Sundays. Their offensive line is good. We know how good their play caller is. Christian Watson came back and had a big play tonight. And we've been saying this, and a lot of you guys have been reaching out, being like, what's LaFleur's deal? Why is he so conservative with Jordan Love? And I don't know if something clicked. Obviously, they were down at halftime, and they came out of the gates. They forced a 3-and-out, and on their next 3 possessions, it was touchdown, 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 in this ball game. It's a wrap. Like the Steelers aren't coming back from that. And to me, the success of this team is going to go as far because if they have a lead, their pass rush is going to dominate. Micah is one of the more naturally gifted pass rushers we've seen of like the internet age. You give me up 10 points, second, third, and long, guaranteed passing positions. He is a dominant force. You saw Jeff Hafley tonight, moving him all over the place. On third downs, they had him like starting at linebacker and running up. He's such a versatile chess piece. And the rest of their defensive linemen, obviously Rashawn Gary, they have incredible amount of players who can create pressure, starting with one of the best. But it's about getting a lead, and that's how they're going to tee off, and that's how they're going to dominate. But to me, offensively, like, it's the best performance Jordan Love has had in a long, long time. Obviously tied a Packer record with Brett Favre for 20 straight completions. And he was dealing the ball all over the place. I mean, one thing in this offense, you're going to get some pretty basic quick reads, ball out of your hand, and if you're accurate, there's going to be a lot of easy completions. But tonight there were 2 plays. The one where he stands in there, I guess he doesn't quite stand in there, but he's kind of backpedaling as there are multiple defenders bearing down on him. And he throws a 50-50 ball up to Tucker Kraft, who, let's face it, probably not a 50-50 ball. It's probably more 80-20 for him. He makes the play and he takes it for like 60 or 70 yards. The play where Elliott's leg got snapped. And then there was another play where he scrambled to his right, threw across his body, down the field, overthrew a leaping defender, and hit Christian Watson for a huge explosive play. If he's going to bring that to the table, like, this is a Super Bowl contender. And that was the first time I would imagine a lot of Packer fans agree. Like, him and LaFleur were just perfectly in sync. And let's face it, the irony of the night is that's how Rodgers looked. Just dominated. His final numbers tonight were 29 of 37 for 360 yards, 3 touchdowns, and no interceptions. That was an Aaron Rodgers-like performance. And I give Aaron some credit because he even talked about it when they drafted Jordan Love. He did not want to treat him like he was treated. And by all accounts, their relationship is really good. And Jordan Love gives him a lot of credit for including him and forcing him to be part of it. And I think Jordan Love has driven Packer fans somewhat mad because they have seen in that first year by the end of the season him look like Aaron Rodgers. And then last year was all over the map, and I think a lot of that has to do with him getting injured early in the season. And then this year, let's face it, it's been clunky. It's just been bizarre. Like, people keep asking me, what do you think? I'm like, I don't know. You just watch him and something's off. And then you see tonight, and let's face it, part of it is the Steelers' defense is not good. But when you play a defense that isn't good, if you are good, you eviscerate them. You annihilate them. And I can imagine that's what they're saying at halftime. Like, these guys can't cover us. What are we doing? And they flipped a switch and they came out. And I do think that's the type performance that can kind of ignite a season. Because the other thing, if you're the Packers right now, you go, that's our ceiling. We know our pass rush is ceiling because we've seen it throughout this season. We have seen Micah dominate. We have seen Rashawn Gary play at an elite level. We trust those guys. And Jeff Hafley and the rest of the unit, like, we feel good about it, especially if we have the lead. The question mark has been offense and the quarterback. Like, what's going on? Well, that's the ceiling. And if that's the ceiling, you go, why can't we compete to be the number one seed and win this division? And then you look at the division, you go, the Bears, you're a fraud. I mean, your quarterback's not very good. You just lost to Snoop Huntley on the road to a team that was 1-5 and had a million injuries all season. Even the guys today that were back had not played well early in the season. And you kind of got worked in that game because your quarterback was atrocious. And then Minnesota has a million injuries and a major problem at quarterback. They literally don't have one. So you go, that was a team that was in our way, literally beating us last year. See you guys. So it's us versus the Lions. They're our foe. And we beat them earlier this season. The Lions clearly aren't going to go away. But, like, this is a two-horse race. And I think both these two teams, I would imagine LaFleur, Dan Campbell, the organizations are thinking, we win this division, 13, 14 wins, we have a good shot at the number one overall seed. Obviously, the Eagles took advantage today of the Giants, but I still think they got some question marks against better teams. You know, the Rams and Seattle are good, but they're going to beat up on each other. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are 5-2 and have had a very impressive season, but they got a million injuries, and they just lost Mike Evans essentially for the season. So it is wide open. And if you're the Green Bay Packers, you made this massive trade to get Micah Parsons to be in this position. And for a couple weeks there, it felt like, what is going on? They were winning some games, but like that tie against the Cowboys, how did that happen? And then you watch a game like tonight, you're like, that shouldn't happen. We're way better than most of these teams. Because you saw them playing Pittsburgh. And listen, I think these last couple weeks brings Pittsburgh. I think we have to look at them a little bit through a different lens, right? But it was like, okay, this is, I would have said coming into this game, I don't know how high Pittsburgh's ceiling is, but they should double-digit win team and win the division. And then you watch tonight, you go, they're not even close to the level of the Green Bay Packers. Because their offense isn't explosive enough, and their defense isn't good. And I think that was the big thing, is like their defense wasn't good. LaFleur, Jordan Love, pedal to the metal, and they just eviscerated them. They can't cover anybody. You saw it last week, and then you saw it tonight. And when your pass rush isn't just dominating, it's like, listen, no one's acting like Darrelle Revis, Deion Sanders, and Chris Harris Jr. is their slot guy. No one acts like the Packers secondary is some all-time great unit. But their pass rush, linebacker play, it's just really good. And you're watching the Pittsburgh Steelers, like, hey, what's the easiest way to make average defensive back play look good? A pass rush. You watch tonight, Jordan Love was just slinging that thing around. And it's not all just him getting rid of the ball after one snap. So if you can't cover people in the NFL, especially in their conference, look who they got to play in big games. Would be Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Indiana Jones. I mean, Justin Herbert. Like, I can't take you seriously. It hasn't even got cold yet for your quarterback, who's actually played pretty good. The problem when you watch the Pittsburgh Steelers, like, you watch the Packers, you go, they're very well-rounded, right? They got multiple wide receivers, a sweet tight end. They always have a good offensive line. Defensively, good defensive line, good linebackers. Their DBs play as a unit. You watch You go, well, you're paying DK $150 million. Okay, I get it. He looks like Terrell Owens. Doesn't exactly play like him. You would like a little more for what you're paying, but still, freak show. Any game when he's on can take over. So it's like I don't agree with the move, but I understand it. You got no other wide receivers. You got a bunch of tight ends, and you got Jalen Warren, and they did a good job tonight, like explaining because I'm like, God, I feel like he's running a little harder. How hard he trained and in Hawaii, carrying the soccer nets. But it's like he would be an unreal number 2 back, but they kind of have to treat him at times like the number 1 back. So your running game isn't that great. Your passing game is limited to essentially one wide receiver. One of your tight ends should probably be an offensive tackle. So you have no explosive passing game. So the moment the Packers flipped it and they got up, especially by more than a touchdown, the Steelers are not built for that. They have no shot to come back. It's whatever, 16-7 for the Packers at halftime. It's like, yeah, they're not out of it. They'll be fine. If you reverse that, Steelers would be screwed. They are not built to come back. And for a long time, and we could litigate this some other time about Aaron Rodgers' comebacks, never been his strong point. Something Coward has hammered for years. Derek Carr famously actually has way more comebacks than Aaron Rodgers. I think a lot of people would say for a lot of his career, he was not losing. Agree. I think some people would say it's just not really his thing. But at 41 years old, like, I'm not putting tonight or last week on him. But he does, like, at that age, you need some help. And defensively, the Steelers, like, Tomlin's a defensive guy. And the defense is now getting worse and worse as the week. It's not even cold outside yet. You can't just depend. Like, TJ Watt's not Myles Garrett. He's not just going to have 4 or 5 sacks a game. And these last couple weeks, you're like, I'd like a little more. Where are the other guys? And they're just nowhere to be found. How many times Love wasn't sacked tonight? Think about that. Obviously, Love has some mobility, but wasn't sacked. You had 10 days off. I'll give you a little bit of pass on the Thursday night game. You're a road team, a little older, tough spot. Obviously, not a great loss to lose to Joe Flacco, but still. But then you get 10 days off at home. You can't sack him one time. That's pretty crazy. I mean, it really is. And then on the flip side, it was like they were just feasting on Aaron as that game went on. They were all over his ass. And I'm watching the Steelers and going, a reason that I started to believe in you a couple weeks ago was like, well, you have the formula of the pass rush. That just translates. Like, that works. You don't have to have the best marketing. You have great food. People are going to talk about it, and people are going to show up at your restaurant. You can have some deficiencies, but if you got TJ Watt and some of the other guys all over the quarterback all the time, like, your defense can be pretty good. I'm watching now. It's like, yeah, it's non-existent. You're paying premiums for guys that aren't producing premiums. And now all of a sudden, like, the Bengals got to be kicking themselves. If they don't blow a 14-point lead today in the fourth quarter to Aaron Glenn and Justin Fields, they'd have 4 wins. Same as the Pittsburgh Steelers. So, yeah, I mean, I just think the Steelers, man, I don't think they're a player away. And I would imagine they'll try to do something here at the deadline, but I don't know if that fixes much. This is a very flawed team. And listen, the AFC is clearly not as good as it's been the last couple of weeks or years, but I don't see this team doing much. They're just going to flip a switch. Like Jalen Ramsey, TJ Watt, some of these guys just going to become like their prime version of a couple years ago as it starts getting freezing cold outside. Now, based on their division, you know, when you start 1-5, you got a pretty big hole to dig out of, but the easiest way to dig yourself out of a hole is to drop the shovel. And that's kind of what the Ravens did today. Pretty sure they mentioned that the Ravens get the Dolphins this Thursday. So let's take a look at the Ravens schedule. They get the Dolphins Thursday night. Then they get the Vikings, who do not have a quarterback. Then they get the Browns, who also do not have a quarterback. Then they get the Jets, who, again, needed a miracle to come back against the Bengals. Then they get the Bengals. I thought the Ravens were dead, but once the way it played out today, like, I don't trust the Bengals because, I mean, their defense just sucks. And the Steelers just have issues. So Massive win by the Packers. Very, very impressive performance by Jordan Love and Matt LaFleur. And listen, you go in at halftime, like players and coaches, they love saying, like, there's no such thing as halftime adjustments, which is true because you're constantly adjusting every time you come to the sideline. But there is, like, everyone take a deep breath. We kind of re-message. We kind of get a reorganized viewpoint of where we want to attack. And clearly what was ever said, what was ever tweaked coming out of the locker room worked. Because that Packer team looked like the team that most people after a couple of weeks thought could win the Super Bowl. And we hadn't seen it for a while. And LaFleur, the coaching staff, they deserve a lot of credit. And if you're Mike Tomlin, feels like we're spinning the wheels again. Kind of starting to feel like it's felt the last couple of years. Does this have the inevitable 9-10 wins, one and done? And then it's like, oh, yeah, just roll it back again. We'll just keep paying you. I mean, James Franklin got canned. Brian Kelly got canned. We're seeing, and listen, I'm not acting like Mike Tomlin's resume isn't better than those guys. But, like, what was James Franklin's problem? Could never beat anyone good. Now it feels like Mike Tomlin, like, if we go a decade with him never winning a playoff game and just getting the 9 wins, like, that's no longer an accomplishment anymore. It's impressive relative to a lot of bad coaches, but it's like, what's your ceiling? We know what your floor is. Your floor is good. But are we going nowhere? Because if you're just going nowhere, I don't quite understand the point of this anymore. And it feels like we're headed toward that moment in January again when it's just like they lose in the first round to the Bills or the Chiefs or the Colts by like 14 points, and we just go, we're here again. What are they going to do? Speaking of a team that's here again, a lot of people think I hate the Falcons. I don't know any of these people. Like, I have nothing personally against them. I truly don't even care. I just had to take a couple years ago, like, I just don't see it with this organization. And their owner, I remember last year, put himself in the Hall of Fame, was kind of funny, but also was kind of an indictment of, like, what's going on here? Like, this feels a little out of whack. You know, and then they hired Raheem Morris, who immediately came in. And listen, I didn't make this story up. He did. He was asked, why do you have so many coaches on your staff? He had 26, which I'm pretty sure was a record in the NFL. And he said, because I plan on training guys so when we win and lose our coordinators and lose our position coaches to become coordinators at other places, we have the replacements already on staff. And we don't need to train from scratch. And he even admitted, like, that's a pretty arrogant thing to say, but I believe in what we're doing and we're going to win. Well, last year they didn't win. They didn't make the playoffs. This year, they're 3-4, and I looked up today. It was the fourth quarter, and they're playing the Miami Dolphins, who is the laughingstock of the NFL. There is nobody who is getting consistently made fun of more than Mike McDaniel and his franchise. And he was up 31-3. And you go, John, they didn't have their starting quarterback. I said, I know. They had their backup, who is the highest paid backup. I'm not talking about a starter that got benched during the season. I'm talking about a guy going into the season that was the number 2 quarterback. He's making almost $30 million. And we've seen all around the league, the 49ers won 4 games with Mac Jones. Like, listen, win or lose the game, but you should be able to compete with a guy that you're paying $27.5 million. Not only could they not compete, they got steamrolled. And it does feel a little bit, starting with Rich McKay, with the GM, with Raheem, with this whole operation. They have just taken a bunch of money with all these coaches, with this Kirk Cousins contract, which is going to go down as one of the worst ones of all time. I like Michael Penix, but there weren't many people that agreed with them thinking he was a top 10 pick. I was actually more inclined to agree with them, but it clearly has not worked. Everything they have done has been a complete disaster. I don't see it. The owner is mid-80s, how everyone and their entire job, and you talk about a place that just needs to get the light, flipped and the whole place just blown up. I would say Atlanta and everyone involved in that situation, from the GM to the coaching staff, is in major, major trouble. Because lose to Kyle Shanahan Sunday Night Football on the road, like a lot of people have had a similar fate. Lose at home, to Tua in the Miami Dolphins with the backup quarterback that you're paying $27.5 million to was really a sight to behold. I'm trying to look, see if I can find the box score here because I wanted to see. I think I just skipped it. Tua's final numbers, which Tua Tagovailoa, who got benched last week, who it sounded like Mike, who has been pretty optimistic, had almost given up on with his press conference earlier in the week, had 6 incompletions and 4 touchdowns. I just I think that's the most embarrassing outcome in recent memory. To be down 31-3 to the Miami Dolphins, 31-3, and have Tua throw 4 touchdowns on you to 4 different guys. That's crazy. Speaking of crazy, for a split second, I looked down and then I looked back up and I saw Jackson Dart freaking out. And you knew it wasn't good. So I immediately text the group text. I'm like, who was that? And they're like, Cam. I couldn't watch. I would imagine it had a similar vibe to Fred Warner, ankle pointing the wrong way. I think Skattebo's already gotten surgery tonight. That's a devastating blow. And I've been pretty consistent. I'm like, hey, they got a lot of positive momentum. Even in this game, Skattebo scores an early touchdown. It's like 7-7. Then it's 14-7. But you're like, God, I don't know if the Giants are going to cover or not. But it just felt like they were just kind of being frisky today. And just a lot of momentum. Even my wife calls them the frat boys. Like the frat boys. She's like, yeah, the Skattebo and the quarterback. They just got something cool going on. The Eagles gave Skattebo, the fucking Philadelphia Eagles fans, 70,000, gave him a standing ovation when he got carted off. Because there's not a human alive that likes football that doesn't like watching a running back lower his head every single time and try to run people over. It's like universally respected. I've said this before. I got asked all the time over the last 8 months, how do you think Cam will do in the NFL? How do you think Cam will do in the NFL? Every single person I know around here that's a big ASU fan, number one thing they ask. And I was kind of wrong. I'm like, I just don't know if you can run people over in the NFL. And not only was he running people over in the NFL, he just looked like a good player. It was like him and Dart, even without Neighbors. Like, listen, this is a consumable team. And the moment his ankle pointed the other way and he got carted off, yeah, I mean, it just felt like, listen, it's not like they were going to make the playoffs anyway, or even probably win 8 games. But they were a watchable team. They were a team that just had something going for them. It felt like it all ended. And you felt as the game was going and Dayball's losing his you-know-what on the sideline, he's no dummy. He knows it too. I've been adamant. I would just give Dayball an extra year and just kind of let this play out with Skattebo, let Neighbors come back. The problem is this thing now, losing him, the momentum, it's going to get so ugly that you're just going to look up and it's a 4 or 5 win team and it's going to feel just like a disaster all season long. So that was a devastating blow for the job security of the GM and the head coach. I mean, it really was. And I've said this forever. Whenever someone asks, do you miss it? Would you ever do it again? Do you ever wish? One, I've been a podcaster now for almost a decade. I feel very fortunate that not only I was born to do what I'm doing right now, but the thing that I could never get over while I was in it, and the thing that still kind of gives me the heebie-jeebies when I think about it, was if you're working for a team, coach, GM, front office, owner, whoever, associated with the team, when someone gets injured, like in most of our industries, obviously there are things that are out of our control, right? If a law is passed that impacts our business, if someone we're in business with cancels a contract or something. I mean, listen, I don't care what you do, you could have unforeseen circumstances. There is nothing like in the sport of football just knowing, yeah, more than likely we're just going to lose a player a game. Go to training camp. Yeah, more than likely we're going to lose 3 or 4 people to major injuries during practice. And it's just part of the business. But it's something that's still I can't imagine being Dayball, Brian, Joe Shane, the ownership, the fans, that feeling of just watching someone there and knowing he's screwed. Literally his foot is pointing the other way. His season is over. if anything, we just cross our fingers, knock on wood, that he's completely fine next year. But you just never know. I mean, I've seen it with Fred Warner. You see it with Skattebo. I hope. I love those two guys. But, like, I don't care how much progress we've made in modern medicine. There are still just human ligament, like, elements to people's bodies that some things aren't as fixable as others. And it just really, really sucks. And I just can't imagine. Like, I don't know how, if you're Joe Shane or Brian Daboll, you even sleep at night tonight. And I would imagine they don't really, because they realize, like, they probably were feeling pretty good. Like, hey, we got some momentum. Probably, even if we just get like a fake extension, we'll get another year. I think that dramatically changes it, because I think it'll just feel so much uglier. And Bill Polian's famous line of, like, you listen to the fans, you'll be sitting with them. The reality is the fans now have more juice than they've ever had, because it's the noise is so loud, it's impossible to not hear it. Even Justin Fields, who, listen, he's not a good player. Uh, but I've said this since watching him in Chicago, the way Poles handled that situation. Last year, getting benched for Russell Wilson, who just stinks. I'd rather have Justin Fields run around than watch Russell Wilson play. But even he said he found himself this week in a closet crying. And he wasn't trying to throw a pity party. If you go watch his press conference, it was pretty moving. And I just think, as being a human being, like, you see the owner say that about you, even if you're speaking some truth, but it just feels like your whole professional career, uh, your whole credibility as an athlete is just crumbling. And this is what I give these guys a lot of credit for. You just got to keep your head up, and you just got to keep pounding, which is easy to say, but it's much harder to execute in real life. Like, yeah, just keep swinging. And I'm a big believer in that. Just keep swinging. Sometimes it's easier than others, but you gotta, like, put another foot forward and just keep moving forward. And I'll give him credit. Like, he's pretty mentally tough. Now, obviously, the Bengals, who were just atrocious on defense, I honestly wasn't even paying that close attention to the game, because I just thought the Bengals were blowing them out. And I was like, God, the Bengals are about to be 4-4. They got a bunch of just positive momentum going with their offense, scoring a bunch of points. Then all of a sudden they go for two and they get the ball back and they score again. You're like, God, they're going to lose. And they did. So, props to Justin Fields for just keeping his head high. Uh, what else is going on? Watching the Colts and the Titans. One, Jonathan Taylor is having just 2 years ago it was McCaffrey. Last year it was Saquon. This year it's Jonathan Taylor, who just looks like the best offensive player in football, who's just an unstoppable force. Now, they did show a highlight during the Nance Romo game, and they came back, and Nance had a comment like, yeah, pretty pathetic effort there by the defense. And, Jim Nance this isn't Sean McDonough. He's not slinging a bunch of takes. Like, if you watch Sean McDonough call a game, he has a fucking take on everything. Like, hey, bro, you're not the analyst. I don't need your take on every situation. But I think he views himself as like a play-by-play guy / podcaster. That is not Jim Nance's thing. He'll add his opinion every once in a while, but he's old school broadcaster. Jonathan Taylor's big run, he came back basically saying they quit. I don't think he's wrong. The Titans not only have quit, they are terrible. I mean, they are an atrocious football team, which the Indianapolis Colts blew them out. I don't even know what the final score was. It was a lot to a little. But one thing that kind of went viral yesterday, 38-14, was that Steve Sarkisian would not only be interested in going to the pros, like, he'd be interested in the Titans job. And I don't know Diana Rossini that well. We've DM'd a couple times, asked her to come on the show probably like 6 months ago. I like her. I know people that know her that like her. I don't think, look, she gets real information. But I also thought, like, middle end of October, he still got 5 games left because he hadn't played the Mississippi State. I don't know if he'd put this out there yet. So I was like, I think the timing was a little off. He came out after they pulled out a game out of what. I mean, they had no business. They were down 17 points in the fourth quarter. End up winning in overtime. Arch statistically played his best game of the season. He got a concussion. Sark was pissed. And Jimmy Sexton And Ed Manowitz, who I used to work with in Philly, who's now Jimmy Sexton's right-hand man and represents Sark and Lane and Billy Napier and all these guys. They put out a statement yesterday basically saying, like, this is bullshit, which Sark had said is unprecedented. Jimmy Sexton is rumor king. He wants the rumors out there. But clearly they didn't put this one out because he never would have posted that. But Steve Sarkisian is not leaving Texas, where he makes like $11 million. And as a coaching staff, his special teams coach is making $1 million. His coordinators are making 2 or 3. Probably, beside Ohio State, the highest paid coaching staff in America. And from a roster standpoint, probably one of the highest paid rosters. The University of Texas in 2025 is a much better job than the Tennessee Titans. Not even close. Tennessee doesn't have that much talent. I like Cam Ward at Miami, but it's hard to totally judge him in this situation. You couldn't feel confident taking that job like Cam Ward's a player. You also, when you work at a school, the AD, the president, some boosters, like obviously you're dealing with a lot of different people. But how's that any different than the Titans? They have a football guy from Packers, Chad Brinker, who's now the president. They have a GM from the Chiefs, who's now the GM. And they got an owner who doesn't even live in Tennessee, who is very active and very emotional and always telling you to fire people. It is a pretty jumbled up, fucked up situation. So I'm not trying to dispute that Sark has no interest ever in moving to the NFL, even after this season. Because there is a chance, it also crossed my mind that if you're Sark, you're like, I don't want to be the guy to have to tell the Manning family their nephew, their son, is not welcome back at the program. He's not going to be the starter anymore. That would be a tough situation. I don't want to be that guy. So instead, I'll just jump ship, which is what crossed my mind. But then when he refuted it like that, I thought, he's been in the Final Four the last 2 years. Program is having a quote-unquote down year. They're probably still going to win 9 games. They'll be fine, big picture. He's going to go to the Titans? I love Nashville. Got married there. I love that city. The NFL team right now is a joke. I think Eddie George, I don't even know where he's coaching, put out a statement or someone asked him in an interview. He said the last couple of years of firing all these people have set back the organization a decade. Like, we make fun of a lot of different places, Miami included. Titans are bad, man. They got a lot going on. So he's coaching at Bowling Green. I just think I can't imagine there'd be a lot of people. Brian Callahan was making $3 million a year. That's like what Sark's offensive coordinator makes. Sark calls the plays too. But what are we talking about? The Titans are, they pay nothing. Ask Mike Vrabel if he's happy that he's gone. So that part of that report was like, Sark is not taking the Titans job. Sark might be interested in like the Eagles job. Sark would be interested in like the Packers job. He's not leaving Texas for the Tennessee Titans. Pats and Bills. I think we got a pretty interesting little, like I would have felt pretty confident at the start of the season that Bills were the biggest lock in America to win that division. I don't know. Pat's schedule sucks. The Bills still got to play the Chiefs this upcoming week. This is why you pay a lot for a head coach. I said this forever with the Chargers. I'm like, just pay for a real guy. Open up your checkbook. Now, that's the thing with this offseason. It's like, who are those guys? Like, it doesn't really feel like there's a variable. But when you have the opportunity and you have a bad coach, go get that guy. Because it immediately changes your franchise. The Pats were one of the worst teams we've ever seen last year. They were atrocious. And now they're just going to win 13 games. They went from that bad to like 12 or 13 wins. And listen, their schedule's conducive to some extra wins. Even if they were playing a hard schedule, they'd probably win 10. All because they have a legit vision and a CEO head coach that knows what he's doing. That's why let's dive into the Brian Kelly situation. I watched that game last night, and I put this out on the Everything app as a, 20 milligram gummy deep, just slamming my Stanley and some popcorn. When they came out in the second half and A&M just bludgeoned them and went from down a couple points to up double digits within 20 minutes of real time, you went, this is over. Like, there are things, anyone who's listening to this that's had a bad breakup, that's been divorced, there are things that get said in a personal relationship, especially with a significant other. We're human beings. We argue. But there are lines that if they're crossed, there's no coming back from. And anyone that's ever been in a relationship, that when something gets said, like there's no crossing back over those words. And I felt like that third quarter of the Brian Kelly era, it was like the divorce is on. Like, it's just over. There's no one in the program. There's no players. There's no coaches on the staff. And most importantly, there's no the boosters / the fans that can ever look at this man and take him seriously. And there were a couple of videos that went viral of him screaming at his assistant coaches. One, he screamed at a special teams coach, basically for kicking it to the star punt returner / wide receiver for A&M. He took it to the house. And he said, if you do that again, you will lose your job. Or punting it to him will cause you to get fired or something like that. And he also screamed at the offensive coordinator who, I think at the end of the first half, threw a ball in the flat when they didn't have any timeouts. He got tackled. It's like, Brian, you're the CEO head coach. So you're not a play caller or anything. You're the CEO. So every time something comes through the headset, a play call on offense, you know what you can do? I don't like that. Let's do something else. That doesn't make sense here because of this situation. Or, when you're on the headset and they're about to punt and you hear, hey, whatever the punt call is, we cannot punt it to this guy. Or, I don't know, before punt runs out there, you look at the special teams coordinator and you fucking tell him, kick the ball out of bounds. You are the boss. There is no one on that sideline above you. So when I hear, he made some bad hires, he's the head coach. And these CEO head coaches that start screaming at coordinators for awful play calls, do you know what they're allowed to do? Say, don't do that. I don't need you to make the play call, but you should know the playbook and say, that doesn't make sense here. And you could say, John, that's just micromanaging. I'm not saying do it every single play, but in big critical situations, if you hear something, especially like punting it to a explosive player, going, this doesn't make sense. I don't want us to do this. And you know what that special teams coach says? No problem, coach. We won't do that. But instead, he just started screaming at people. And you could tell last night as it was unraveling and he was just screaming at people like he's just lost. He doesn't know what to do. Because at the end of the day, you know what turns out? He's not any of that. He's actually not some critical schematic genius. I'm not saying I ever thought he was, but whatever his version is at 63, 64 years old, he's just completely the overseer. You watch highlights of Nick Saban at practice up until he retired with the DBs, with the defensive coordinators, making calls, telling assignments based on certain coverages. That defense was Nick Saban's baby. And offensively, when he wanted something, he told the coordinators, run the ball here. Part of his blowups with Lane is because he told him to run it and Lane called passes. But he didn't wait till after the play call to scream at him. I just don't know what Brian Kelly was doing, and I'll tell you what he was doing. He was a guy that actually was just kind of cashing it in. And we've all known people that have done this. People that are over their job. And some of those people might make $20 an hour. Some around America make six figures. Some of them, we talked about this, I remember when I first got hired at Fresno State. One of Pat Hill's big messages to the team was, don't be a union worker. Don't just clock in and clock out. Because when that becomes your mentality, when you just are at work, you're not even that in tune to it in the first place. Take ownership of your role, whatever that is. If you're a starting linebacker, if you're a special teams guy, if you're a backup trying to become a starter. And you watch Brian Kelly and you just went, did he just take this job because of money? Did he truly take this job because he thought he had to take it to win a national championship? Did he take it because he was just kind of bored of Notre Dame? Because his fit in the South obviously did not work, which really, really matters. And at the end of the day, his teams were just not that good. I mean, say what you want. His teams at Notre Dame looked a lot better than his teams at LSU. That now he looked destined to win. I think he went 8-4 last year. Look, he was going to go 8-4 again. Even 2 years ago, when he had Jaden Daniels, Brian Thomas, and Malik Neighbors, he went 9-3. It didn't even feel like he was close to the upper tier in the SEC. But what got him fired, like what got James Franklin fired, is when he started losing to teams, and James was worse because he was losing to Northwestern and UCLA. But like they can't take Brian Kelly seriously when Vanderbilt, Ole Miss, and Texas A&M have all passed you. Now, I also think there's this element of, between Brian Kelly and James Franklin, they paid the two combined over $100 million to pay them to go away. And one time in my life when I got fired from radio, I think I had 3 months left on my contract. And I don't know, I made $80,000. But whatever they had to pay me, I forget whatever the number was, but it was, I don't know, $15,000. And I remember thinking like, God, that's pretty cool. I'm just going to get paid for 3 months to not work. And listen, I'm a pretty ambitious guy. I like to work. But I just remember that feeling of like, I got a couple months to just figure things out. Which at that time, that was a lot of money to me. I mean, it was really impactful, I can't even fathom. And Brian Kelly's been making millions of dollars for 15 plus years, right? Since he's been at Notre Dame, I bet a starting salary, if we look back at 2000, whatever year that would have been, 9 or 10, $4 or $5 million. And then he's been making $7, $8, $10 million for the last decade. So he is filthy rich. But he also felt like a guy who's kind of lost his fastball. At the end of the day, Nick Saban retired. Not because he lost his fastball, but he's like, I don't quite have the energy to keep changing with this changing landscape. Never forget, he was going toe-to-toe with Jim Harbaugh and an absolutely loaded Michigan team the year he retired. Probably should have won that game. Took a J.J. McCarthy's greatest drive of his career. Or Nick Saban would have been in the championship game. And who knows? Maybe he still ends up retiring after that year, win or lose that game. But you watch Brian Kelly, and it just looked like a guy who knew he didn't fit, who took a job that wasn't the right job for him, and was making so much money. I mean, he signed like an NBA contract. You just write it out until they fire me. And that's exactly what they did. They fired him. And some of these coaches come out, and Saban did this with James Franklin. They make it like this victim pity party. Like, he really got screwed. It's like, Nick, you would have fired every fucking person in your path if they would have lost the games that James lost over the years against the real opponents. You would have wanted to kill people. So James didn't get fired overnight. He got fired after a decade of losing to all the good teams. Brian Kelly got fired because he couldn't beat the decent teams, let alone the good ones. And once you're an outsider, you're done. And now I think the question mark is, we're really going to learn this offseason about NIL, this money job market. Because historically, people would be lined up for LSU and Florida. Lined up. In this version of Penn State as well. But you just saw Curt Cignetti, who, my guy Tim Skipper, they had them come back to earth a little bit. Beat him like 100-0. Indiana looks fantastic. Vanderbilt just won. There's a decent chance if Vanderbilt beats Texas, they're going to be in the playoffs. Ole Miss, more than likely, going to be in the playoffs. Indiana, going to be in the playoffs for back-to-back years. So, historically, you had to go to Florida. You had to go to LSU to be in the playoffs. In this NIL era, I don't know. Like, in the NFL, you got a pretty good idea. Like, Titans' job, not a great one. Wouldn't touch it. Packers' job comes open, interest. Steelers' job comes open, interest. John Schneider has an opening. Mike McDonald, smart move. I'd go work for him too. LSU, historically an elite job. Is it as good of a job anymore? I don't know. Is just Brian Kelly mailed it in sucks? If you're them, you go all in for Lane Kiffin. You know what shows you? Is a couple years ago, these teams never would have talked to Lane. I don't want to say he was toxic because his life was, I would say, on the right path in the sense of like he had become a head coach, he had had some success, but I think there were still a lot of red flags around him for the way things ended at Alabama, some of the stuff that people had heard was going on in Florida. That feels like it's all gone now. He's cleaned up his life. Family plays a huge role in his life. They've all moved back out. Obviously, physically, like it's one thing to say you quit drinking. Just look at him. He looks like a guy that quit drinking. You can see it in his face and just the way he carries himself, the way he talks, like what he's doing at Ole Miss. I think there's going to be a bidding war between these two schools. Now, you could also argue if whoever loses out, like there are other really good coaches, but with the amount of money on the line now, it doesn't feel like people want to take, chances, right? So it's going to be hard for some of these lower tier guys. If I was LSU or Florida, I would only hire people from the Power Four. I would only hire someone who's had like a real job. And I'm not saying like Tulane or some of the aren't real jobs, but they can't relate to playing in these Power Four conferences and the pressure that comes along with it. At the end of the day, like, is Matt Rule a huge upgrade over James Franklin? Probably not. But like, if I hire one of those guys, they could flame out. Like, worst case scenario, Matt Rule just gets me 8, 9, 10 wins. Right. So I understand the logic if that's like your best case scenario or Matt Campbell. But you take some of these smaller school guys, it could work. It also could be a disaster because there is no training ground for what they're dealing with and what we deal with. And at LSU and Florida, it's basically like taking over the Philadelphia Eagles. It's basically like taking over the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, it is an intense pressure cooker with the SEC games at night are the best product football has to offer. There is nothing better, just in terms of television product, than Alabama, LSU, Georgia, A&M, these schools at night under Auburn, under Tennessee. It is an elite viewing experience from the couch. And obviously, I've never been to one of these games live. I can't even imagine what it's like live. And that place in the first half when there were some turnovers and LSU looked like they had a chance, I was like, damn, this is pretty sweet. What a tough place to play. Turns out actually it's not. If you have better players than them and their coach quits, and now he's being paid $50 million to basically pack his shit and get the hell out. And LSU fans, I would imagine, are universally euphoric. And Notre Dame fans are probably like, "We told you so." Have a good night. Talk to you soon. See you tomorrow.